So we begin. It's a discovering and exploring your past lives. This is a free intro, and what I'm not going to do in the free intro is tell you what you could get if only you signed up. It's not a sales pitch. I don't like doing those. I don't believe in those, so it's not my thing. What it is, it could be in itself an educational period, this couple of hours or hour or whatever we're doing. In itself, I want it to be full. I want it to be, self-contained. So hopefully we'll accomplish that. Typically we would, obviously. So we're going to do that. And, when I say hopefully, meaning hopefully it also kind of answers questions each person, and there's hundreds watching, that it would be able to address so many different questions from so many different people, from so many different walks of life, including many of them in this room. So the course we're doing is a few weeks long. It's through most of the month of July. It's as a typical courses. We make them about a month long. That way it's just to a few weeks. And then it's sort of nice because in just a matter of weeks, a person can have a lot on a topic, like a nice complete course, and not have it go on and on and on, nor have it be too crunched and in just a one-day kind of a thing. So I like the formula we've been using now for a couple of years, and I like the formula a lot. So in this topic, first, when you hear about past lives, there's various places we want to sort of go with this conversation, but some of it's clearing up some misnomers. But a lot of people get into past lives for the wrong reasons. Some of it's just intrigue. Who was I? Was I really Cleopatra? Because I've always thought I was Cleopatra, because everybody was Cleopatra. So that gets a little funky for people. So there are so many deep layers to really explore. I just think it's fantastic, but it's also going to be fun. Our first week or two is going to be a bit of the theory and exploration and understanding. Then we're going to get really into the fun stuff with looking at our own truths, pieces of truths that are leaking through all the time, telling you who you've been. If you're a very loud, obnoxious person, that might come from somewhere in the past. It doesn't just sprout up on its own. It likely is relevant. Somebody might say, well, I'm a real confident leader. That's probably something you've nurtured somewhere. Now, some people would say, no, it's because my father was a really strong leader, so I got it from him. Even if that's true, you likely knew him in another life where you both nurtured that. What I don't want people to ever do is blame things on their mother, father, or past lives, or anything from your past. I'm not saying your past didn't have an influence. I'm saying don't throw all the blame on one thing. Because when you really start to look at it, you'll start to hear one common word: pattern. If your husband did this, and your father did this, and in past lives, wow. And they were all hard on you, let's say, in some way. They all took advantage of you in some way. Bummer. I mean, it's really like, wow, terrible, right? But wait, who's the common denominator? Uh-oh. So, sorry, but I wonder why you didn't do what you needed to do to stop it in another lifetime. So much so that it had to come back as your father. So much so that you married it. So we are the ones who are supposed to be making changes and shifts. Now, am I saying like that's always easy? Heck no. Especially if we didn't know that. I didn't know there was a pattern. How could I be responsible? I didn't know I had those lifetimes. I understand. So now you're washed of responsibility. No, you're not. Because you also chose to forget that you played a part, that there were any lessons, and that you didn't get them. That way you could get born and blame your father. So there's escapism that some people use for childhood as well as past lives. I'm not saying do the opposite, but I am saying I do recognize there's a pattern. And I have played a part in that pattern. And what's really, really stellar about this is that if you believe what I just said at all, then it would also mean that if I had gotten my lesson X number of lifetimes ago, do you realize if I had gotten it, I might not have then resonated with that father, with that pattern? You see that? Is that possibly true? And if that's possibly true, my not learning my lesson, which I could have chosen to learn, by not learning the lesson, I then contributed to it reincarnating again. See, so, and it's also important to recognize that it's not just people that reincarnate, it's patterns that are reincarnating. Because if I had a soul X that I attracted in a previous lifetime, and we had some dynamic that wasn't very good, and it's like, okay, we both pass away, and it's like, I'm like, oh, that was so challenging. I just hate that person for bringing that pattern into my life. It was obnoxious. And that person says, well, I really didn't like theirs either. But before they died, that person got it and cleared it. One of us is coming back and the other isn't. But wait, I still have to work on that pattern. And I mentioned this just, I think, Sunday in a talk. Come the next lifetime that it is relevant, when I come back, someone else will be hired to fill the role. No different than the old Shakespearean, all the world's a stage and each person playing a part. So I might have had character X on the stage with me, doing headbutting with me here. Now I'm done. Well, that character resigned. They're done with theater. They decided not to be an actor anymore. Who's going to come back and do that role with me? There's going to be somebody always willing to play the roles. You know, creepy characters, wonderful characters. Jesus chose, I'm going to come in and play a role. He's a soul that was evolving, got it, woke up completely and said, I'll go in and play the role now of the proverbial sun coming over the horizon, bringing light to the world after a dark winter. I will go in and be the good luck Jupiter symbol. I will go in and be the symbol of every mythology and so on, Osiris and Horus and whatever else it has to be that I'm going to go and live out and play out to show that there's hope for people. Even if it's, I'm going to be the symbol of life after divorce, life after surgery. It's the symbol of hope. And I got that well enough through my consciousness that I can now embody it. And that's pretty cool. But not everybody plays that particular symbol or role. Some people are like, I like being a jerk. You know? And I heard that you're looking for one. Just like an actor. I heard you're looking for someone that can really do character roles. What do you want me to do? You want me to morph my body? Okay, twist my spinal. Oh, this character's, Quasimodo, in the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Okay, sure. You remember the black and white version of that? You remember how totally morphed that actor got? That's the same actor that played Bligh in Mutiny on the Bounty. Charles Laughton. And if you look at the Hunchback of Notre Dame, you don't go, oh, that's Charles Laughton. I wouldn't anyway. I was like, wow, it's almost intimidating to watch it because it's not all like special effects of today. This was makeup and acting. A certain amount of the stuff they have to do, but he had to get into that role. So that's what happens with people in our lives. We're playing, all the world's just a stage and everybody's playing parts. And then we want to act like my play would be so much better if only you had done a better job playing your part. Well, the truth is, if you play your part so well, nobody would have noticed anybody else's not going so well. So on and on and on we can go with that. But the whole past life notion, some people in the ancient times, they called it the cycle of necessity, the wheel of life, the wheel of karma. All reincarnation is karma that didn't get completed in one lifetime. That's all it is. It's transferred over. Oh, well, you're being transferred here. We're going to give you all your paperwork. There you go. Pack up your desk. You're going, and you're going to take all your materials with you. The karmas, and the word karma means cause and effect. The Sanskrit word means cause and effect. It never meant negative effects. Any cause will have an effect. The concept of every cause having an effect collectively is known as karma. Okay, so every cause has an effect. So I can walk up, kick you in the leg, that will have an effect. Well, not if I run. You can't get me back. Oh, no. Every cause has an effect because in this world, one of the primary laws, karma. People somehow decided to make a erroneous definition for that and said bad karma. Most people, if you say to, meeting you was very karmic. They don't usually go, oh, I'm glad to help. They have this negative connotation to it. So it's kind of a bummer, and we almost can't escape it. It's almost like a branding, and you almost can't escape it now. But in this class, I would like us to do our best to remember. Even if I slip, you can correct me. If it comes across as though I'm implying only one, I might say bad karma, but that doesn't mean there's not good karma. I might say good karma, it doesn't mean there's not bad karma. If I am talking about one or the other, I'll try to specify, because you would have to, because it doesn't only always mean one or the other. So karma is simply a law of cause and effect. Now, the ultimate causation in all the universe is that God said, let there be light. When God caused a thought, we were its effect. So we're the effect of God. We're the effect of God saying, I love so much that I want to create more love. And we then became the child of God. Like a love child, beautiful, in the positive sense. So we're a love child, and we're this collective consciousness, this collective child of God. And then, we went through our thing and wondered what life would be like if we were separate from God. Now watch what happens. Every cause has an effect. So here we are, the effect of God. Now, God's saying, you're my effect, but you'll never actually be complete until you also become a what? A cause. You can't just remain an effect and be complete, because a complete cycle of anything in the that can be known is there has to be a cause and then an effect. As soon as there's an effect, then it can be a cause, and then you have another cycle. But a cause needs an effect. A creator needs a created. A cause needs an effect. Now, we're made in God's image, and God says, you're not going to remain an effect. I made you in my image, which means you're also a cause, a causation, a causer, a thinker, a believer, a creator, okay? So we said, okay, what are we going to create? Well, one of our creations was, what would life be like if we would separate from God? Uh-oh. The effect was the Big Bang, the explosion of the universe, the separation, not just from God, but from each other, and then from ourself. People aren't even in touch with themselves. Where's my emotional body? Well, my liver's not even where my spleen is. All of me, it looks contained, but it's all separated. And then you'll be separated from youth. You'll be separated from having only one color of hair, and start to gray up. You'll be separated from your body, and you'll die and come back again. Everything is now separating, exponentially, mind you. See, it just keeps splintering. So it's kind of a funky, strange thing to imagine. God said, let there be light. We were created. We said, let there be fear. Not that we didn't also create light in our, at moments in our existence, but there was a moment where we slipped and created fearfully. Now you can say, why? And we should have not done that. It's not going to help. It already happened. So now, as we look at this, what do? Jesus says in A Course in Miracles, what I would recommend is you not focus on how and why it happened, let's pretend, 10 billion years ago. I think it's more important that you ask yourself why you still do it every day. And that is more important. Because even when you say, but had we only not, you're not in the moment. You're obsessing on the past, which doesn't really exist anymore because it's not here, but its effects can be felt here. What am I going to do about the effects of lifetimes and that original choice to separate, which is, you could say, it's almost like saying it was your very first lifetime, was when you became created. Then misthought created, it's like in music. Musical notes are just musical notes, but if they're played in a discordant manner, you have sounds that don't sound harmonious. They don't sound peaceful. And that's that music analogy is the same as us in our creation. God's kind of saying to us, look, it's not a matter of evil, it's just discordant. And if you don't, do you like the effects of that in your life? Well, no, because discordant vibration means sickness, war. All it is it's the same creative energy, but the notes used in a discordant fashion, non-harmonious fashion. Well, if I love, I'm usually going to feel harmony. If I hate, I have disharmony. So what would have been ding becomes something off. And that vibration is an illness. That vibration is fear. That vibration is lack. That vibration is attack on each other, defense on each other, discordant sounds. So you needn't judge it all. You just simply say, I really don't like the song that I was yesterday, and I'd like to have a different song for me today. Just think of it as objective as that, just music. I like this. I like this more harmonious song. When I'm speaking in a really harsh way, it's been proven, plants will die if spoken to harshly consistently. Animals, babies, they'll have less healthy immunity and so forth. How could that be? Because of the vibration that comes across with feelings like hate or hurtfulness. By the same token, loving thoughts, loving intentions feed. The old experiments with children that were not hugged, or held during when they're in incubators and all these hospital scenarios. The ones that are not touched at all versus ones that were touched, a very different outcome. Cause and effect, that's karma. And all the topics I'm touching on here, they're just whatever's coming to me in the moment. Understand that in the course itself, we're going to go far deeper and far broader into everything. But, karma for now, just understanding its cause and effect. And so if in our very first lifetime, let's pretend it was actually a spiritual lifetime. We were spirit. And then when we thought we could be less than spirit, we then became the effect of that thought, which became more densifying beings. And when we felt terrible for separating from being spirit beings to dense beings, there was an effect of that, and then an effect of that, and then an effect of that. We gradually descended. Remember the famous, band from the 80s, Devo? There was no actual word in the dictionary at the time, but they made up their own word. Devo meant de-evolution. They were making fun of mankind is devolving, not evolving. I never know what kind of trivia is going to pop in at any given moment, but there you go. 80s bands trivia. So this idea, cause, effect, and then we're descending. Cause and an effect. So as soon as this starts happening, we're although we're greatly consciously moving in that direction, descending, on a deep, deep level, the Christ that we are ultimately is trying to save our butts. Saying, what are you guys doing? So our higher self is trying to get our lower self to get back. The lower self is going, oh, we're on a terrible roll. Come on back, too late. We've fallen and we can't get up. The higher self, on the other hand, is saying, all right, going to be that way, are you? We better put in some safety. Because we are still then, our higher self is still responsible. It has the right to create, right? So the lower self, which we now split from, because we split from God, we now have more than one self. We have a higher self and a lower self. The God self that remembers, the lower self that wants to forget. So the lower self is falling and falling and falling. The higher self says, all right, since we have the right to co-create reality, we're going to contribute. You and I agreed on an unconscious level, but on a higher self level, we're going to create some laws that keep it all kind of orderly. You go ahead and keep falling, but for every time you fall, we're going to arrange, you're going to come back in another lifetime and have a chance to repair it. So the reparative came from our higher selves. Some people say karma is a law of God. God has nothing to do with it other than the will for us to come home. So yes, God wills there to be karma only because it'll help bring his children home. But God didn't make karma, we did. God didn't make lifetimes. We did. God didn't say, you're going to actually have different lifetimes. Some of them are going to be terrible, some of them great. Don't know why. Oh well. That's not God. God, only love and only oneness. You can't die in God. The whole death, rebirth is not God. People say, oh, it's so wonderful. There has to be God because rainbows and butterflies and you get to reincarnate until you get things right. God's like, I never saw them wrong. How could I be accused for being the one to create a law to make it right? The part of you that is right created a way to make it right. I would love for you to just start identifying with that side. And we're like, oh, no. I've done some horrible things. I got to come back and pay for it. And God's like, yeah, but try grace. Oh, no. We can't have that. It would be irresponsible for me to be forgiven. That's what we did. Drama queens from day one. Into the world, and just go through hell. And we even have songs and poems that say, you got to go through hell before you get to heaven. And I've always thought, since I was in high school, I heard that in a song, I went, no, you don't. I was always, arguing with the radio. So, it's all I had, man. So, even things like that, I would say, I can see that that's not true. Feel it in here. You got to go through hell before you get to heaven. Now, some of us go, no, that makes sense. Would you tell a child that? There's no hope for you, honey. Now that you got an A minus on your, for the first time, you're up creek. Now that you had one naughty thought, you're up creek. You wouldn't do that to anybody you loved, then why not do that for yourself? Do it differently for yourself. Let yourself off the hook. That's all we have to do is treat ourselves like we would anybody else we cared for. So we say, the law of grace. Now, the law of grace doesn't mean that you're allowed to just do what you want and pretend it doesn't matter. Some people even say, then what does it matter? Michael teaches and other sources, life's an illusion. So then why don't you just do whatever? Because in the illusion of this universe, there's something called karma. And in the illusion, if you do horrible things, you're going to be paying for it, which means you're going to be here more often, doing more stuff that doesn't feel good in the illusion. Yes, it's an illusion, but our job is to clean it so the light of God shines and finds no darkness that we've created. No discordant sounds anymore. So, from another angle, one philosophy could be like the Hindu perspective. The Hindu would be, you could say, amongst the oldest cultures that we know today. The Hindu, yes, East Indian, but the Hindu concepts like the Vedas. The oldest culture that we could know today for the most part. And from the beginning, they're saying, we have been taught in our sacred books that we all have light within us. And Krishna explained that when he was here, in the stories of Krishna. We all have light within us, but Mara, or illusion, Maya, by some cultures, illusion got the best of us, and it tainted us. It made us turn into fear-based people. Whatever the case, their philosophy is going to be, you must become clean and pure again. You must clear yourself of bad karma. To do that, you have to live a pretty stellar life. Not once, but dozens or even possibly hundreds of times to completely clear your history. And that is how people lived for thousands of years. And the mystics and yogis of their faith and belief systems do it, work it, and some of them become very austere, very wonderful, powerful, they can float, they can, some really cool special effects. But Buddha comes along and says, man, this is a little nutty. Why are you people living like this? Because it takes thousands of hundreds of lifetimes or whatever to clear. Buddha's like, no. If lifetimes, if everything's an illusion, so is your belief that you're not good enough and that it takes hundreds of lifetimes to become good enough. Uh-oh. So they don't like him, clearly. But I will say, what they're saying is true for its time, because that's what people believe. That's fine. And you know what? If you had no other faith, at least that one got you trying to get to be a better person. Not a problem. Buddha steps it up. He says, let's just ramp this up. Let's change it from 100 lifetimes of purity just to 1. Wow, that's called efficient, to say the least. 1 lifetime instead of, yes, 1. Oh, but you have to be perfect. Don't even breathe because you don't do anything because it could be naughty. He wasn't that obsessive. He said, no, actually, learn to see through it. Learn to see through it. Not be perfect, but yeah, behave lovingly, but also don't be so hard on yourself. It's an illusion. So he really did ramp it up and, get it like, wow, that awakening. Jesus comes along and says, Course in Miracles, 1 year. Not even 1 lifetime. 1 year. I'm going to shift your consciousness by doing these workbook lessons and getting you to study reality and illusion and ego. Wow. Like, boom. And, and you think that's something. And at some point, it's going to be 1 day. If you just live 1 day really in the zone, but we're not going to push our luck there. My point is, there's a progression of understanding karma. There's still karma in the Hindu, the Buddhist, and even today's concepts of life. Karma's still there. But the karma we now could call grace would be, if cause always has an effect, even the law of grace is karmic. Because if you accept grace, it's a cause to bring a new effect, my release. So Buddha sits and meditates long enough to have an insight, and one of them is, this whole thing's an illusion. I get it. Yes?
So I have a question. So is karma more of an emotional thing, or is it more of a law? Like if it's like take out a sociopath or a psychopath, someone who doesn't feel guilt.
Yeah. So karma is an objective law. It's not an emotional thing, as you're asking. It's a objective law. No matter who you are, every cause has an effect. Even in nature. But then you'd have to sit and analyze, what forms it takes there, or for animals, what form it takes. The bottom line is every cause has an effect. Even beyond this universe in God, God was a cause, we're an effect. Every belief will have a response. Every belief. If I have a doubt about who I am, low self-worth, there will be effects. Now, when I say effects, don't go into terrible effects. No, just equal to your thoughts. Terrible thoughts could bring some terrible things. Minor thoughts could bring some minor things if they're negative. And the same for positives. Minor positives could bring you some minor positives. Major positive thoughts and beliefs could bring you major things. It's all objective. It's all clear and clean. The bottom line is, and we're hearing a lot more about the word responsibility these days, if you really want to understand that word, then just understand karma. Nothing can happen by chance. Nothing can happen by accident. And then even those statements get twisted and misused and almost overused in a shallow way. To really sit and breathe that in, nothing can happen by chance. The Bible will tell you, not one bird can fall from the sky accidentally. Not one hair can fall from your head. Everything, the way the Bible says it, everything is numbered, which means it's all numeric, it's all geometric, it's all vibrational, it's all perfect. Vibrationally, it's all perfect. You can't have one freckle that's mine. You have yours, and it vibrationally manifested. On that note, this concept of the akashic records, we could make this all a very linear story. Once upon a time there was God, God created mankind, they came to the earth, then the Garden of Eden, and then they slipped and fell, and then that caused karma there, and then they had generations, and everybody that comes to earth tends to just screw up. It's like Las Vegas, Everybody that goes here is going to do something naughty, or something, and that's earth. So, and it just happens like that, and, keep it real linear. And then the Akashic Records is some sort of like an actual hall somewhere where there's records kept of all your deeds. And when you die, your soul will go to that hall and they'll say, here, have a seat. We're going to show you some videos of you in Sin City. And it's not good. So do you want to just go to hell now, or do you want to watch the film first to where we have to show you the evidence where you'll agree? That's the linear version of the story, but it's not the real story. The real story is there's not even a hall of records per se, not a linear one. In fact, the Hall of Records, called the Akashic Records, the Hall of Records is like a sound of a library. The records are called the Akashic Records that are in the library, called the Hall of Records. And so in the Hall of Records, you find the Akashic Records. In the Akashic Records, there's a record of you. Every lifetime since day one, before there were even days. Since the moment of separation, you could say a record begins. But in God, there's no time. So what would that record be? Not much. Where you have a recorded record that you can read would be when time began. And that's when the separation began. So if you go back and read your records, you're not going to really read about your oneness with God. You're going to read, if you could, all the way back to the day when you contributed to leaving God. This is the day I was not born. It's the day I died, spiritually. And my records began. Into the universe I came. And those are records that are almost so abstract, they're not intelligible to your human mind to be able to explain it. To explain that these souls that are actually one, yet seemingly separate, fly into the universe all of a sudden. Now, I'm supposed to individuate and describe what mine is experiencing, but mine is still yours, because we're still one. So that's going to be all very confusing. So where do we pick up the records? You see, so what we get used to doing is, how about the relevant ones? Instead of all of them, could I just dial up relevant records for 20, Alec, on the game, Jeopardy or whatever it is? I'll just take relevant records for 20, please. And so when you do these kinds of readings, even your own self-exploration, we're always really looking for what's relevant. If you said to Edgar Cayce, could tell me this and this? There were times Cayce would reprimand the people asking for information. He said, why would you be asking that? It has nothing to do with anything. Just curiosity? He would even say, are you curious? Is that what this is about? And reprimand people. So it's like you're supposed to really be asking for what's helpful. And what's helpful is going to be what's relevant. So in looking for relevance, you're going to be saying, I journeyed into this universe. Now, I might not remember pieces or large bits of my lifetimes. What I do know is starting right now, in this lifetime, I'm having some situations with health. I'm having situations with relationship, whatever it happens to be. And when they would ask Edgar Cayce, Cayce would read the Akashic Records. There are people, it became very fashionable to advertise that you read Akashic Records. You go to any psychic fair. I read tarot, I read palms, I read the Akashic Records. No, they don't usually. At best, they know how to access bits of information. To read the Akashic Records, you're going to sound a bit more like Edgar Cayce. And by that, what I mean is, Cayce wouldn't say, I'm sensing that you may have had a lifetime in Egypt. I think you were a man. Okay, that's fine. That's pretty cool. Very telling for you. You might go, oh my God, I knew it. Cayce wouldn't say I kind of or maybe or think. Cayce would say, 4 lifetimes in the land known as Egypt. First there was Upper Egypt, and that was in the early Egyptian period, but then you were also there before it was known as Egypt. And so on. Down to details you just can't fathom. That's reading the Akashic Records. His gift was that. Nostradamus accessed a portion of the Akashic Records, typically the future. And the future is totally made up of what decisions we make today, so it was still very subjective. Accurate as heck, a lot of the times, but very subjective, not to mention he wrote it very cryptically. Edgar Cayce was mostly the past, because mostly people were asking about the past. Cayce was also a lot about present time, relationship issues, all kinds of topics for today, and some future. In proportion, the future was probably 5% of his readings, where Nostradamus was 95. Some was present time for him, and then some future. Cayce had the ability to read the Akashic Records, which meant everything that was the past is the present, and only the probabilities of the future. When you read the Akashic Records for the future, it's only ever possibilities and probabilities, and that's Nostradamus. Now, Casey, though, made a reference to the future. Like, he's talking about the major earth changes that some of us have heard of, and even other kinds of catastrophes on earth. He describes them, which is not far off in our future now. He describes them in fair detail, but he's describing them almost like vividly and giving dates. And when Helen, who's writing A Course in Miracles, is talking to Jesus in her channelings, he's telling her some things about Casey and some kudos about Casey here and there. But he does say, one thing, it's weird because he makes a reference. He said, Casey, I'm paraphrasing or summarizing, he said, and in fact, Casey was so clear, he even gave things about the future. And then he says, and he was stellar accurate. This is Jesus. Can you imagine putting that in your, promos materials, Jesus says, Edgar Casey's all right, wow, put that on your promo. So he's saying Casey was seeing an accurate vision of the future. Now, this is Jesus who typically says, don't worry about the past and future, stay in the now. Typically, he's saying that. He still talked about past lives, which I'll get to in a sec. But he's telling, regarding Casey, he said, yeah. And in fact, he gave an accurate portrayal of what is to come. And that, again, is like, wow. So Akashic Records on Casey's level is something that is different than someone who advertises it. Just, any psychic could advertise. It's Akashic Records. It isn't. You're picking up psychic impressions doesn't mean it's the Akashic Records. You could do astrology and go with planets. That's not necessarily the Akashic Records. Read my palm. It's not necessarily. I said not necessarily because on one level, it all is the Akashic Records. Here's why. The records are not just a place where you read volumes of books about people. You are a living record. You're a living expression of your Akashic Records. It gets a little bit strange, but your body, every cell of your body is surrounded by ether, like a force field. Every cell has an ether around it, a force field. One of the most subtle portion of the ether is actually your records. So every cell of my body is surrounded by my records, which is hard to understand. But, you think discs are now amazing compared to what, 8-track tapes, reel-to-reels and all that. Imagine, now it's all getting down to our technologies are getting down to the little dots, of information. Imagine that every cell of your body is wrapped in ether, and one portion of the ether is your records. Your DNA has one form of that record, but nothing in comparison to your complete Akashic Records. So technically, everything is within you, including your own records. But because every cell is my record, those cells have manifested as skin, right? Bones, muscles, agreed? So even my skin, bone, muscles, and so forth are my records. So when you read the lines on my hand, you are reading one access point into my records. My palm is one window in. That's why it's accurate. Oh, just come on, they're just lines. The lines are forming based on the vibration of my records within. My hair, my nose, my eyes, my height, everything about me. Foods I prefer, foods that I'm really repelled by. Cultures I'm attracted to or repelled by. Races, genders, I'm gay, I'm straight, anything. It's all in me, as me. And all it's doing is pushing out into becoming what you see as me. So that's why, like when I'm working with people, I don't say, I think you should have an Akashic record reading as opposed to everything I do is related to the Akashic records. As soon as I stand here or sit here and somebody asks a question, I start rolling. That's the Akashic records based on my interpretation, which is important to say. Because we could all, if we all had the skills equally, tap the Akashic records and read, let's say, the history of this podium, and we would all come up with generally the same answers based on the Akashic records. But they would be slightly different because every one of us has filters. You see? So When Edgar Cayce was asked, there's a book, a fabulous book on the true life of Jesus, and it's called The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ. They asked Cayce, is that an accurate record? Because it claims to be from the akashic records. Is this an accurate record of Jesus' life? Cayce said, yes, it is. For him. For Levi, the author. He did say yes, but it is through that person's filters. The filters are going to be tainting the material anywhere from 1% to 100%. Cayce was very, very clear, but not perfect, because you're in a body. You're a human. Helen, who wrote A Course in Miracles, she wasn't at all a perfect, clear channel. She was an amazing channel, but perfect and clear, no. She was always screwing with the materials. She was always resisting. She refused to write the word God, because she didn't believe in God. So she would refuse, for the first chapters, she would not do it. She would say it or him or something, but not let herself own that word. They had to kind of go back and alter the words a little bit to put in what was supposed to be there. But she had her resistances. You have your filters. And you have fear filters, and you also have just style differences. We could all describe a journey. Well, let's do a meditation and go and explore the akashic records, and one of you is going to be, it was like a computer, and I sat there, so the akashic records are definitely computers, because that may be what it is for you. It doesn't mean that just because we're different, there's no such thing as akashic records. And that's why when Cayce said Levi's version, Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, is true, for him, he adds that, it means that, generally that, though, especially for Levi, generally that material was right. We know because of lost books of the Bible corroborating so many pieces of it. But there are one or two lines that didn't even agree with Cayce's reading the akashic records of Jesus. But the fact that you could be missing 2 points out of 2 million, I think it's pretty cool. Just one or two pieces. One piece was Levi says Jesus went to Greece in part of his travels. Cayce was asked, did Jesus go to Greece? He said no. I mean, you can't be any more clear than that. He said no. Did he or didn't he? What about me being asked? I don't care. What matters to me is, if you believe he did, let's talk about what that would have been like. You see, I would just look for what can we gain from it, rather than trying to prove factually, because then you'll go nowhere, because something's always going to cancel something else out, and then you go nowhere. I would just say, let's build on it. I've taught classes on Aquarian Gospel. We read about Greece, and I never said a word about Cayce on that. And if we were talking about Cayce, I would tell Cayce, Cayce said he didn't go to Greece. It depends on what we're talking about, what's important and what builds us and brings us closer to God. Yes?
Can I ask a question about past lives?
Yes.
What about the part of reincarnation that has to do with the amazement that life is and so many things that we can do? And one lifetime is generally, especially now, because we're physically challenged.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the ancient times, people lived for a very long time,
Sure.
and they would have a chance to do many different things. Well, even now, we have tremendous possibility of doing thousands of things as an individual.
Right. So what's the question?
So the question is, what about that? Are you going to be getting into that? Because it's not all...
What's the that you just said?
It's not all about remediating things that we haven't figured out to be good about yet. It's also, to me, like, what am I... Because I think heaven is here. This is my,
Yeah.
we get it right. And so I'm focusing on things that I'm doing, and I'm enjoying, and it's great. But there's also all kinds of other
Right.
things that interest me.
So past lives, let's cut to the chase on, and this is answering her question for the folks online that didn't hear it. I'm still reiterating it. But let's cut to the chase on is nothing, no matter how great your lifetimes can become, come anything close to the reality of being one with God. So you can have a stellar life and it's still nothing close to it. So even if you could create the best of best lifetimes, you're still not home. There's the nightmare, negative karma, a happy dream, positive karma, which is the best you're going to do here, and then there's beyond that, the oneness with God. That's just to say that and get that out of the way. However, there is such a thing as a happy dream. which is, yes, when you are not only living a better life in consciousness, creating a better life then, but also the lifetimes you have had, and choices you have made and are making can create a better life even today. So one of the things we will end up doing is looking at how, not only how it has happened positively, but how to change your future by doing things differently today, including harnessing your past lives and bringing them into today. So for example, and how could past lives be relevant there? Very much so. For example, if I had a lifetime that I wasn't aware of, where I was a major influence on people through the theater, ancient Greece, okay? This lifetime, I didn't know about that, but this lifetime, I find myself kind of feeling sheepish about excelling, at work and being part of the, executive work that I'm doing. They ask me to sometimes do a talk about what my team is working on and all that, and I just have a hard time with it. Making sense so far? Then I go to some psychic fair, someone says, wow, you made such a difference in people's lives because you were an actor. What I could do is say to myself, oh man, I could access that part of me, and now, welcome you guys, and all of a sudden I know how to speak, I know how to come out. The actor knows how to access the part of him that isn't afraid, and that is what it's like in the positive sense, the past lives, where you can grab parts, confidence that you once had, or let's pretend, even if it was a lesson you learned from a negative. I didn't speak up, and it kept me in lifetimes of crap. Well, you know what? Done. I could even take a negative, and I must turn it into a positive. To become complete. When you say it's an illusion, I'm going to break the wheel. When Buddha said, I'm breaking the wheel of karma, he didn't say, and I'll continue to do ridiculous things, and it won't matter because it's an illusion. He also taught behave, which means to be and have healthy consciousness, which means you would also behave accordingly. So to be and have healthy consciousness. So for me, it's going to be like whether it's positives that I draw forward or lessons I learned, that's the ultimate for the human experience, is to turn everything into let it be a positive or turn it into a positive so that I become nothing but an embodiment of positivity. I get it. There's nothing that can happen that's outside of me that makes me powerless. Well, there was this one time I felt powerless. Yes. What did I learn from that? Now I'm powerful again because I turned it into something I chose to learn. And it is a choice. That's why choice is an expression of free will, which is our greatest gift of all. Because then we can say, wait a minute. No. Choose again. Choose God. Choose light. Choose love. Choose consciousness. And we can do that on a daily basis. So lifetimes, it isn't just for this is exciting, curiosity only. It's really ultimately going to get back to, just like if you're doing 12-step work and you're getting into your history and clearing your old ways. It's no different whether it's past 10 minutes ago or 10 lifetimes ago. And some people could say, I don't believe in that because I don't remember any. Doesn't mean it isn't true. So, you don't remember several of the days of your life. It doesn't mean you didn't exist on those days. And then all other people will say, well, why isn't it in the world more? Why don't more people? Believe it or not, more people believe in it than don't believe in it. If you do a poll of the people on this planet, especially since you'd be adding Hindu and Buddhist and many cultures that believe in it. Great minds, whether it's Edison, Emerson, philosophers, from ancient times, Plato, they understood lifetimes. Reincarnation, when people say to you, reincarnation, the Bible, my religion says no. Your religions were twisted to say no, but everybody understood reincarnation before Christendom. It was pretty well understood everywhere. It was accepted everywhere, for the most part. There were still some small sects of people that didn't know for sure. But for the most part, people on this planet always understood and believed in reincarnation. And Reincarnation was consciously voted out of being included in the Bible. Any books that implied reincarnation were voted out. Statements about reincarnation were voted out. And when that vote took place, a few hundred years after the time of Jesus, it was only by one vote. So it's very interesting when you think about it. By one vote. I remember Alan Cohen said, how do they know that he wasn't like swatting a fly or something? That, he made something humorous out of it. But, one vote. Because the wave was, we're creating a religion that basically says, if people have a chance to come back and get it right next time, what would make them obey us this lifetime? So, by saying, we're the church, this is a great move in terms of business. It's a great business move. You're basically creating the demand for the product you're about to make. It's really amazing. Let's create symptoms and then we'll create a medicine for it. Just brilliant. So the religion said, okay, let's tell them, hey, it's not us, it's what the Bible says. Well, who made the Bible? Well, we did, but let's forget that. It's what the Bible says. This is what the books that we have determined are righteous books. There were thousands to choose from, and you ended up with a relative handful of books. And the ones that, like the Book of Enoch that spoke of reincarnation, was voted out. And some others as well. It still slips in there, but Edgar Cayce had this one great comment. He said, I could read reincarnation into the Bible, and 2 minutes later you could read it right back out. Because a line interpreted a certain way. The most obvious, one Old Testament one is Job, who says, why, I'm just paraphrasing, so forgive me, but Job's basically saying, why does my life suck? And, and everybody gives him theories about it, and none of them are really answering, why did my life fall apart? At the very end of the story, he asks God, and God's like, well, it's about time, you asked me instead of your head trying to figure it all out. So he says, Job, here's the bottom line. I knew you before you were Job. And that's a very pretty clear implication. Before you were Job, there were things that you thought, said, or did, and now, as Job, they're coming back to you. Okay? That's an Old Testament example. There's also the New Testament, Jesus himself saying about, Elijah. Jesus is talking about the prophet Elijah has to come back before the ultimate Messiah. And then they said, well, then how do we know when he comes? He says he has come. He was John. Now, it's an interesting thing if you ever decide to research that, which I wouldn't. But if you ever decided to research it, because even on the internet, when you try to research that, there will be blocks. You'll have more things on the internet from fundamental Christians telling you how that's not reincarnation than things that there are. You're going to have all kinds of things pulling you to go and figure out and find that reading, that statement. There's all kinds of sabotage just around that one thing. And then there's all kinds of people that are going to say, well, we think he meant it metaphorically. It was like he was saying, Elijah did come back, in a sort of a way. He's kind of like John the Baptist. So they really stretch it when he said it so blatantly. And then it says, and then the apostles realized he was speaking about John the Baptist. So it seems very, very clear, but like Cayce said, you read it in, somebody will read it right back out. But what we need to understand is, if you ever, and I wouldn't say get into disputes, work with people where they're at and not try to convince them of something for just your ego's sake. But I will say, when you're dealing with reincarnation, if someone were able to listen, including ourselves, just to the fact that reincarnation existed until it was voted out, that alone tells me anybody that's now saying it doesn't exist is going off of a post-voted out decision. It's biased. That's like saying, which happens all the time, bring up chiropractic to enough people. Go out and talk chiropractic to 10 average people, not holistic people in Sedona. Go out and talk to 10 average people. A good majority of them are still going to say, I heard they're quacks. Now, wait, but who told us they were quacks? It was printed in the American Medical Association journal. Don't use chiropractors, they're quacks. Well, maybe they're right. Except that in a court case, the federal judge said, you guys have gone out of your way to purposefully sabotage an accurate science called chiropractic, and you now owe them zillions of dollars for the damages you've done. They were proven. Does that mean we're now hearing people say, doctors are quacks? You see, they can get away with it. The church has gotten away with it for so long, people go along with it as though it's true. Reincarnation is either a scam or is absolutely an evil. So there's all that. So let that pass, and now we just simply understand. The wisest souls, the mystics, religions before Christian times, and even many religions today still understand this is real. And to the Hindu, it's around and around, and you just try to perfect, and it'll be thousands of lifetimes. To the Buddhist, you try to get it right now by waking up and being a better person, not creating more karma, but also handling karma when it does, negative karma when it does come your way, handling it with grace so that it dissipates. Because if a cause created an effect and you didn't react to the effect, it doesn't become a new cause. You neutralized it. Done. And to mystics, it's going to be very evident that, yes, I've lived many lifetimes. And I understand how all this connects. So bringing this to more modern times, what is the purpose? Some people will say, but okay, fine, what if there is reincarnation? I don't remember. Okay, we talked about them. What about the ones that my religion says no? They're actually just going on something that was a scam that they bought into at some point, and they're running on that. Really, it's just they've been actually brainwashed in a sense. But put that aside. Those who just say, well, I kind of believe, but it doesn't do me any good because I don't remember any, that's fine. Let them be. But what's amazing is I'm telling you, you are a living record of yourself. And so it bleeds into, figuratively, it bleeds into your stature, confidence, lack of everything about you. How masculine, how feminine, how neutral, how gay, how straight, how this, how that, is very much a bleeding through of my past. So a person doesn't typically go from just A to Z. You're still you. If your soul says, generally, the last several lifetimes, I've been very confident, there's not a being that says, we're going to now drop you off in non-confident and you're going to just be something that you're not. That's not what's going to happen. You're generally going to be carrying your vibes wherever you go. Now, I'm not saying you're exactly the same, but generally, you're still there. And it can take a lot of different forms, but I want to explain this piece. People will say, I really have an affinity to Jesus, and I have brown hair. And I've had people do this. I think I was so-and-so because there's people that make big claims like that all the time. I was so-and-so because and they put together these pieces. Sometimes they're uncanny synchronicities, guys. What you have to understand is there's archetypes as well. So just because you're really, really confident, it doesn't mean you were also the one being in history that was the most confident ever. You see what I'm saying? A lot of us can identify with Mary Magdalene doesn't mean we were all her. One of us may have been. It was me. But one of us may have been. But a lot of us identify with her, and it's confusing. I feel such a connection. I had to have been her. You might have been. You might have also been one of her aides, supporters, and you felt that much love and connection with her that that's what you're remembering. You might also just be archetypally similar. A woman who wants to come out and be firm and clear and strong and faithful and, so on. Great. And I'm not telling you any of it's right or wrong. It doesn't matter. I do know that if I put all my eggs in one basket and invest that I am definitely that one person, nobody else is allowed to be, I get emotionally invested. It could deter me a little bit. So, you know, I've had psychics, I've had all kinds of students, and hey, were you this and that? I don't really go there very often. What I will tell you, though, is important is this. Whatever you have been, you won't remain identified with that person usually for your entire life. Usually, if you were so-and-so, there will be a period of time when you strongly identify with that person. You no longer identify as much doesn't mean you were wrong and you weren't them. It could be that you fulfilled what that character came through to do. If I need my inner confidence, then maybe it's going to be like a Knights Templar lifetime's going to come through. Next thing I know, somebody gave me a Knights Templar costume for Halloween this year. And then I keep movies. I can put on anything, and it's all about Knights Templar. Wait a minute. This is getting freaky. And I love those things. I love watching how it comes through. You know, I think it's amazing. Lifetimes and a psychic saying, you know, I know, Knights Templar, you know, and I think it's fun and funny as long as you understand it and keep it in perspective. It's not to make me better than anyone or worse than anyone. You know, it's about, this is what's happening to me at this time. And here's one of the other weird things, in a good way weird, things about past lives. Not only do you go through phases of different lifetimes bleeding through. See, an example would be when I was in high school and shortly after, I was all Asian. Like I had those Asian little wicker-looking painted things hanging in my bachelor apartment, you know, and I had martial arts and I was into kung fu and it was just so cool. I'd go places and friends would be like, I'm not going with you in your little Chinese shirt, your little double-buttoned, you know. One of them said, you look like Hop Sing from Bonanza, you know. Nobody wanted to go. I just was like, it's so into the Asian. It was just like, cool. I went pajamas that looked like a silk Chinese, you know, outfit. Yeah, I was out there. So, but that's one lifetime. And you think, it was a phase, a blue phase, like a painter, you know, Asian phase. No, that's when that lifetime was most dramatically coming through, and probably for good reasons. You needed something there, you were re-experiencing something there, and so on. But the trippy part to me is, and the people that are in your life at that time are probably the people you knew when you were Asian. Even the groups of people that move in and out, those that do move in and out, are usually relevant to the lifetimes that you're most dramatically living. And it's not usually just one lifetime, of course, but there are the more dramatic ones. And I ask you guys, when you research, when you get readings, look for, and when you do them for others, look for the most relevant. Even if it's a fear-based thing. Okay, I'm really struggling. I'm supposed to be going through this divorce, but I'm struggling. I'm having some, you know, confidence issues, and I'm feeling sad. And you could even have past life stuff, relevant stuff right then that's coming through. This woman went to Edgar Casey, she was struggling with divorce and all that. And she said, and I had this dream. Saw my husband in a house, and he was in one room and I was in another, but there was an opening between the rooms. And I walked up to the opening and I shut they were French doors, and I shut these French doors. What did that mean? Casey said, you knew him in a French lifetime, and the French doors I'm closing the doors on that French lifetime. Beautiful. Now, you have to recognize that same way to listen to life. French doors, but it was just a dream. No. Life is nothing but a metaphor. It's just all symbolic. So, when you are going through a phase of not a dream of a French door, but an attraction for light-haired people, it might be a Nordic lifetime. A time when I felt very insecure could be a time when I was brought into slavery. Feelings, puns, plays on words, conceptual things. I'm really into such and such at this time or that time. All these things are playing in somehow. I think it's really, really magnificent. Not to get lost in, but to bring it here. again, I'm going to say that. Don't go get lost in the past, bring the past here, and then it's intriguing. Because in the moment, everything's coming to the moment. And I'm saying, are you relevant or not? Now. And I keep everything in the now. That's how you stay out of getting caught up in the past or the future. Bring it to the now. How is this relevant? Or there's a saying, how does it grow corn? There's, some people use that phrase. It's, how is this relevant? Where does the rubber meet the road? And in other lifetimes, I've done many past life things with people, but I don't just say, well, today's going to be a past life reading, or akashic record or whatever. To me, the akashic records are everything and everywhere. So when I sit with you, I may not even mention that I'm doing anything related to the akashic records, because everything I'm saying is going to be tied into it anyway. I'm not saying I'm special. I'm just saying that's the way my brain happens to work. My consciousness works. I don't imagine sitting going, let me give some sort of limited perspective of a limited situation. That's not how my consciousness would work. As soon as someone asks something, my consciousness is already saying, I want to answer the best answer I can give, which then has allowed me to then tap into that. It's never been a linear thing. It's not like I have the keys, a special set of keys. It's really intention. The truth is, when you love people, love is heart-centered, and the akashic records are metaphorically housed in your heart center. Metaphorically. It's in every cell, but metaphorically it's here. When you love, you are automatically tapping into the akashic records. You can't not tap into the akashic records when you love, because love is oneness. Oneness would mean, how could I not know? So here come answers. And it could be, as a counselor, psychotherapist you could be, and you could still be tapping into sort of higher answers. You could be an actor who's able to move into characters more dramatically and more effectively for audiences. Believe it or not, you might be tapping the akashic records. There was, I won't go into the details of it, but back in the early film days, one of the most famous monsters, the Frankenstein, those kind of movies, when people got freaked watching those kinds of things. At least one particular actor who became just renowned for embodying the creature so thoroughly. How did he do it? He actually had somebody come in, do hypnosis on him to help him access creepy parts of himself. So he became the monster. You see? And that's what actors really are doing. They're accessing parts of themselves. If that's nowhere in there that they can reach, see, feel, it'll look contrived. But when they're really impressing you, wow, they really took on that role, they accomplish something. But what it is in a word is imagination. Your imagination helps you tap the akashic records more than your intellect could ever. When you say, I'm going to imagine what it would be like to be a Native American living on the land, your akashic records are going to start opening to that topic and giving you insights, what it would feel like. It starts downloading or uploading, however you want to call it. But, it starts downloading into your being, and you start playing that. When an artist is painting something, look at singers. You listen to Creedence Clearwater. He's singing at the bayou and all. He never lived anywhere near a bayou or even a pond. But in an interview once, John Fogerty said, I don't know what it was, but there was something that would come to me, like what it was like. He was clearly remembering. He didn't just intellectually study life on the bayou and sing about life in that circumstance. He felt it with his imagination and then his feelings. So your imagination is a big part of how you tap the akashic records, which sounds counterproductive, because then you're thinking, you mean you just imagine false stuff? No. But it means you imagine anything and real stuff starts to emerge. And if a painter says, I'm channeling the Akashic records and they paint Jesus, and it's been done. They paint them looking very Middle Eastern, dark skin, dark hair, dark eyes, which is inaccurate historically. But if they said to me, I sat, I got quiet, and I felt his presence, and I painted, I'm good with that. I'm not going to correct them. Why? Because that's there, just like Levi and Casey's comment about that book. That's true for them. Therefore, it is true. Why would you factually try to prove them wrong if it's really right for them in here? I don't need to be the one doing that. So, you do your best. If you're reading for yourself or others, you do your best to bring things through. You know that you're a filter. You have filters. There are people that are going to filter and say, I'm doing an Akashic record reading. Yes, wait, I'm checking. Yep, Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene. Somebody else will read and say, nope, he wasn't. What do you do with that?
I was going to ask you if you were married to Jesus.
No. And people have said, Michael, your vibration and you're into Christ consciousness. Were you Jesus? It's like sometimes use common sense. That would be like a downgrade for him to come back as just a human who's part of this scenario here. No self-offense on me, but I'm just saying use common sense too. Just because you liked the Revolutionary War doesn't mean you were George Washington. You might have even been one of the British, So don't overthink things and don't make things be just because your ego wants them to be. I want to be a really grand character. It's really not going to matter. At the end of it all, at the end of any lifetime, what you did with it is what matters, not who you were. There's people that have been the grandest leaders in the world that were total screw-ups. And there were humble people, slaves to those individuals who were stellar beings. Which one would you rather be? And you should only be saying the second of the two. But we all know that when someone says, I had a reading and I was somebody amazing, everybody leans forward because it's exciting to hear all the cool stuff. Nobody was ever the garbage collector, in any civilization. Oh, I just picked up trash, I ran the burn pile down at the end of the, dirt road, And so what matters is what you do with these things. This lifetime or any lifetime. But watch for patterns. Bring forth lessons of, if you had negative experiences, bring forth the lessons and own them and be a better person and bring forth the gifts. If you're a painter, you didn't paint just one lifetime. I'm not saying you were a perfect painter once, because what made that time happen? You nurture these things. And anything that you nurtured became more, and you nurtured it more, became more, and so on. Some things you abstain from or feel no talent with doesn't mean you weren't those things. Sometimes you misused something, got your hand slapped and said, never again. I'm never touching paints again. I was painting once. A child of mine fell in a well and drowned. I can't even look at art. Now today you walk down the street, I hate art. You don't just anything. You need to learn why. If something's dramatically positive or negative, it's always enlightening to understand why. Does that mean you have to remember the details of the lifetime? Maybe, maybe not. What's important is the theme of the lifetime. It's helpful for you to understand. I have this just total repulsion when it comes to art. I'm not talented or I'm disinterested or whatever it is. I even get visceral reactions. I don't like art. Do you think it is part of your higher good to just remain ignorant as to this thing that looks like it grips you? I don't care, even if it's somebody you're attracted to. Nothing's supposed to grip you. There is nothing to grip. You're everything. So why does it seem like something has power over me, for good or ill? Track it. And you may not remember the facts, details, but you should at least start becoming aware of the themes. Like, I start tracking it and realize, wait a minute, wow, you're right, there is something there. And I've always felt this way. Coincidentally, because what the superstitious or what some fundamental people might say is, God just created you hating art. And you just have to accept that. No, it doesn't work that way. God didn't look at you and create a little molded you and go, we're going to take out art. I changed my mind. You have no fashion sense, and so forth. Off you go. You know, it's not at all how these things happen. We were perfect beings. We gradually descended into doubt about ourselves because we separated from holiness. We started taking it out on each other, and it started collectively bringing on this guilts and shames and karmas, and then they become illnesses. Some illnesses you have are because of things you collectively do in this lifetime, cumulatively certain diet you have or didn't have. Sometimes you slip and fall and you bruised your hip or something, and it's because you slipped and fell, and maybe it's just a lesson of pay attention where you're at. But some things are ailments that were started in other lifetimes. Do you think you're supposed to be a victim ever of any kind? No. So what's going to happen is for me to start owning nothing by chance. Everything playing its part. Everything's a cause and an effect. Even if I slipped and hurt my hip and it was about get grounded, there's still a cause and an effect. I'm not being grounded. It's set into a motion and effect. Bam! Show up. Got it. And then I'm good to go. But there are ailments, lifetimes. And someone can come to me and say, okay, I've got this pain in one part of my body. I was told by a psychic it was from another lifetime. Even if I check and say, I can see it, that's what it is. Even if we get it, guys, if a person's had something, a pattern, painting, non-painting, pain, non-pain, if they've had something for lifetimes, you can bet your butt that their soul is somewhat attached to that. You can't just go, it's not like, tag you're it. It's not like as soon as you see it, it's dissipated. It's hide and seek or something. It's like hide and seek in the sense that these things hide, but just because you see it doesn't mean it goes away. You sometimes have to let layers of stuff go with it. Like when I started an hour plus ago, one comment I made, it's like there's a part of us that thinks if I don't pay up, it's irresponsible. I need to have this illness till the end of this lifetime. How do you know that? Well, a psychic said that's what my akashic record said. And even if I said, okay, yeah, let me check. Yep, I see the records. Yeah, it says you're supposed to be in pain with this illness till you die because that clears your record. That's not God's reality. So can we create a miracle? Let's say that I can, and I go, gone. If that person's afraid to let it go, it's not going to go. And A Course in Miracles, a book on miracles, tells you that. If a miracle would incite fear in someone, it will run away. It will, because God would never want to cause you harm, including fear. So even a miracle of healing will step aside. And guys, you're not bad for that. Helen, who wrote A Course in Miracles, died painfully of cancer. Her, 3 out of 4 of the major editors of A Course in Miracles died of pretty, harsh body diseases. It kind of makes you think it's like the Ark of the Covenant or something. Anybody that was around the channeling of that book has fried, radiation effects and, But the bottom line is, all of them died at peace. They really did. All of them died at peace. Some even more than others, but they really can't. And to be in that state of consciousness, something was right. But they still, Helen especially, wouldn't let go of her fears and the stuff that caused her illness. Now, on this side, she's hearing Jesus saying, you don't have to actually go through this painful thing. On the other side, Jesus is going, and it doesn't matter, because in a few minutes, you're going to get it. As soon as you're out of your body, you're going to go, oh, geez, I can't believe I fell for that, It's all going to be okay. So past lives, yeah, I think it's fun. I think it's intriguing. I know that for me, I remember, I didn't get born like some mystic. Some people wonder, wow, you born like holy, or something because you're a spiritual teacher. No, scared and not understanding things, and the things I did know were not encouraged. So no, it didn't go stellar. It's not like I had some holy family around me. Instead, challenged, but past lives were still leaking through. They were, I say leaking, meaning sometimes you're conscious of something and sometimes it just leaks through without you consciously being aware of it. But I remember when I was little, I don't remember, so little, I remember, my dad telling me years later, he said, you've always been weird, but even when you were little, I remember you coming up to me saying, Daddy, make them call me, it was a historic character. I was them, make them call me that instead of these other names, I was trying to get my parents to get everybody to address me by another name that I had in another lifetime. And then I remember when I was probably 6, I couldn't resist. I saw my father's scuba diving outfit, and that includes your wetsuit, right? But scuba diving also often included a headpiece that you pulled over. It had a cutout face here and the rubber mat that went around, and it all went to about here. And I was like, this is the Knights Templar for me. So you couldn't get me out of that thing. I was walking around, Southern California, man, it was hot, and I still had that thing on, walking around. I was totally there. And that was around 6-ish, give or take a year. And around the same time, around 7, I remember on our way to school, I had these ideas. I had from 7 until probably 12-ish or somewhere in there, very clear, vivid memories of certain battles that I won't explain details of, but battles. And I remember talking kids into before school. Let's meet before school and let's reenact battles. And I mean, I was just a kid, but I would remember the battles. And I would say, okay, there's that team over there and there's this over here. Now, here's what they're going to do. I would predict what they were going to do on their side. They were going to come up the ranks over here and they're going to pull up over there and they're going to try to do this, and using military kind of terminology. It was all clear to me. And, it was just, and I would just stand watching. I'm a kid, but I would stand proudly watching it unfold because I knew what everybody was going to do. Here's what they're going to do. Be ready. And you guys just surprise attack over there because I knew what was going to happen. So these things were just leaking through, and I thought it was funny then and now. But then I went to one time I ran into a guy from elementary school. And I said, man, how have you been? God's all this time. And he said, oh yeah, great. And he said, man, I haven't seen you in all these years. I mean, this is a guy I knew in 5th grade, 4th grade. And, here it is just 10 years ago or whatever. And he's like, yeah. So I said, so what do you do? He said, well, I'll have to explain that. I said, well, what? What do you do? And he said, well, you remember you used to always try to get all the kids to reenact certain battle scenes? And I said, yeah. He said, and I used to be like, dude, you got something wrong with you, As a kid, I was like, why do you keep wanting to do this? He said, don't you remember you were there? He said, that's what I used to tell him. He goes, well, I'm a historian on that topic now. I'm like, see? So it's beautiful. And if you have children, they're going to leak comments about lifetimes and strange synchronicities. And some parents go, oh, you must have had a dream. And it's strange, The great George Patton in the Second World War, you may not be into war, but I hope you're grateful that we stopped Nazi Germany from taking over more of the world, because they took over a lot of it, right? And one of the reasons that happened is because George Patton was saying he would go into battles. They were trying to stop him because he was the primary force to take Germany. And they were trying to stop him, the Nazis obviously, except Patton claimed that, he said, we're just doing the battles over that we did back in Spartan days. So he was able to know where the Nazis were going to try to counterattack because he said, we've already done this. They're just doing the same generals that were the leaders of ancient Greece and Sparta and so on. They're just doing the same tactics. So he would stand on the battlefield going, I got your number, man, because he would be talking past lives. Some people think that, like many a general that became presidents, especially in those days, some people do theorize that they assassinated Patton before he could come back and be put into presidency. Because how would that have gone? Well, yeah, the battles I won because we were past lives, and that would have been just a little too freaky. So they thought he was a little out there in lots of different ways. So it's there, and so as we're going to start coming to a close, one thing I would really like folks to understand is it's always talking through you. It always is. An ailment. I remember once in the 90s, I was living in the Northwest and shoveling some snow. And I remember from a tree, a bunch of powder snow came down over me, right? And you feel this like, cold. Instantly, I remembered that's how I died in one lifetime. And I remembered, oh, wow. And it's a little creepy in a way. But it was fine too, because it's just things kind of coming together. So it's always coming through. You go and meet somebody and you go, wow, I met somebody and, I got this pitter-patter in my heart and I knew that was the one. And then you married them and they almost killed you and then you divorced them and you ran away and said, well, I don't understand. Why did I have... No, that was your heart actually seizing with fear and you thought it was some sort of, romantic pitter-patter. You meet people and you don't always interpret correctly what you're seeing. You have a feeling of, I know this person. Like I had a friend who said, yeah, I met this guy and, neither of us even believed or knew about reincarnation, but we said, if that does exist, this would apply because I viscerally feel like I know you. And they were like, yeah, I know you too. Didn't go well as a relationship, but what they did was partied a lot. And when this gal asked me, what was this lifetime? I said, Roman. You guys were Romans, and it wasn't nice. It wasn't sweet, spiritual. It was kind of gross. And this gal said, well, that would pretty much describe my relationship with this person. Very shallow, very base, and so on. So these things are bleeding through. So I'm saying on so many levels here, I could go on this topic alone, but when you meet someone and you meet them at an art class and it's not an accident, it's probably someone you've known in art circles. You met somebody on a battlefield, you've probably done battle with those people before. You follow? In your platoon or, in some military circles or whatever. And sometimes when you have you're on a soccer team, a baseball team, sometimes those are guys you've actually done battle with because it's teamwork again, just a slightly different form. It's not always literal, slightly different form. If you ever, this is a good one, we'll get into this in the course, but puns and comments. When someone says, you act like you own me. If that ever slips out, I would pause and I would take some time to think about that. You act like you own me. It doesn't mean that they literally did, but it's a possibility. Could also be just a theme that you have been owned and you're sensitive to any feelings like that, and they didn't even do that literally. But sometimes it is that they've done those things. When you have a child that acts like your parent, they often were. And there's times when we have felt attracted to someone, and whether we were going to or whether we did share intimacy with them, sometimes there's this feeling of there's something not right about this. And sometimes that's because it's an old sibling relationship. And it just doesn't feel right. It's not good or bad, it's just, it's not what you are to them, that you remember them to be. But you interpreted it that way because there was an attraction, and then the ego head says, well, attraction must mean romantic. You learn to kind of step back and just watch things. And you realize each person's playing their little part. Jesus attracts his apostles. Don't you think he knew from the get-go? Nice to have you guys with me, betrayer. He knew who was going to do what. The difference is, first, he was aware of it, and that's what I'm asking us to learn to do. Be awake. Be aware. Don't just get into superstitions of past lives. Let it become a tool to help you become aware and conscious and responsible for your life. Furthermore, he not only was aware of who it was, he understood we're going to use that to our advantage. So the person in your life that pushes your buttons and makes you feel like you don't have a voice, help them, let them teach you to find that voice. I'm not saying marry them. I'm saying get it. fulfill the karma so that you don't need to, like when he says to Judas, go do what you're going to do. It's kind of like saying, this is what you're going to do anyway. I'm just going to let it play out in something that I'm open to. You see? So it's you don't want to hate them and say, if only you, Judas, wouldn't betray me, I would have had a better rest of my life. It's okay. So I'm not saying it's nice that you've had people that have been cruel or narrow or whatever in your life, but I am saying that we can extract something from it and be able to say, I don't need that again. So practice being awake. Practice like God as a kid seeing, those battle scenes. It's not because battle's good or bad. It was just the fact that I could see it so clearly. I've also had times where, someone I cared about was getting into a relationship with someone else, and I saw the whole thing, who they were, what archetypes they were playing out, what roles. If I tried to tell this person, it would have looked like I was biased. So they weren't going to hear me. So I was really in a dark period because I'm like, damned if I do and damned if I don't. If I don't say anything, we're done. If I do say something, we're done. So it was like, I have to choose now, how can I be at the most peace while this plays out? Do I force myself to say, how far? And that you're going to run into that too. You're going to see that a child of yours could be downloading their own lessons, but their past lives in a way that could be harmful to them. What do? Lock them in the room for the rest of their life so it doesn't happen? You have to decide that. But you do have to figure out what you can do with the most peace. But think about that. Because past lives are there for us to, if you're going to study past lives or any other topic, it's always going to be about the greater good that you can bring into this topic, into your life and in the life of others. So, that was a major test and a major lesson for me. And I've seen things like that even since, patterns. But remember, you're not always literally manifesting events. It's not always that every person that, let's say, has been bad-mouthing you did that in a past life literally. There's also an archetypal pattern of being betrayed or spoken ill about. And they could just be stepping in right now playing that role. Okay? Doesn't always mean they did that in some other lifetime. So for me, I'm pretty clear about when I feel like that is something I was or did or went through versus this is an archetype. Do you think there's a difference? Not really. In time there is. But I'm still supposed to learn whether it's just a pattern, an archetype, a literal event, or whatever. And I must never hate those who play those roles. The truth of the matter is, in all honesty, in my heart of hearts, if I could snap my finger and release you from that role, I would. So I'm not going to stick you in that role and keep you in that role and hate you for that role, which would keep you stuck in it potentially, but also bind me to it. Instead, love and compassion would release anyone from any kind of role, no matter what they've done. Because then they wouldn't be doing that again. And chances are I wouldn't be dragged back to it again. So to me, the law of grace doesn't exclude the fact of reincarnation. It's another option. In fact, your reincarnations are going to come through. Your past lives are going to leak into your life. You can't say, well, no, I believe in grace, so that's not allowed anymore. They're going to leak in until you bless them gone. You don't just some carte blanche kind of, well, now that I read the word grace in the dictionary, all my lifetimes are clear. No, Buddha explained. You stop feeding the wheel, but you also have to neutralize the things that have all been set into motion already. So yes, be a nicer person, but danged if it isn't going to happen. He says stuff from the past that already exists has to come to the surface to be cleared. And Jesus explains that in his own ways as well. His own lifetime. Jesus himself, he's hung outside of the city gates of Jerusalem. But in a previous lifetime, he was a warrior that sacked Jerusalem and killed, all these people and hung the king outside of the gates of Jerusalem. So what happened to him was actually a fulfillment of things that he had set into motion in another life. Sounds totally sacrilegious, I'm sure, for some people. Wait, Jesus was in another life and he did something? Yep. If he wasn't, then how could you ever use him as a model? If all he ever was holy, descended down from the heavens, never experienced anything on earth, and was perfect, and said, why can't you people do that? Then you could say, well, because you descended perfect. Instead we can say, you lost and remember, didn't you? Yes, I did. And now it's your turn. So to me, it's a very beautiful canvas and portrayal of everything. Past lives fit in. And it's a wonderful painting to really observe. There's soul mandalas, they're called. And I wish more artists would consider tapping into these. But if ever there's an artist who's also psychic, then you could learn to start channeling soul mandalas, which would mean images. So if I'm doing one for this person here, I start symbols, trees, continents, images, face images, memories of their lifetimes, their most predominant, relevant ones in this life will start leaking through, bleeding through, and I will start picking up those impressions, putting them on canvas, and I have your soul mandala. There's you were a Native American, and you were this, and it's really kind of cool, to be able to go, it's kind of like a summary of a painting of a summary of myself. It's really, really cool. But not everybody knows about that, but even those that might think that's intriguing may not have the skills really and maybe confidence to paint and intuit images. But everything about you it's bleeding through. You think, well, no, it's genetics. My nose, my eyes, my skin tone, whatever it is. It's all genetic. Even if you do think it's genetic, your genetics still matched your records. You don't have your mom's eyes, your father's nose, or vice versa, or this or that. You have yours. You might have used them to get that type, a Mediterranean look, a Nordic look, a Native American. That's, true. But people really underestimate how much their looks are picked up from some other lifetime. Something about you. Very, very often. And it's so true that when we do exercises in some of my classes where I ask people to take turns looking at people, what you can do is you can look at someone the way you would looking at an aura. You can look at someone and let your eyes blur, prayerfully ask to see the most relevant lifetimes. And then what you do is you can just look at them as they are, their face, and then just kind of let it blur and start asking, like hypothetically, it's imagination, hypothetically, if that person, if I knew them in the past, what would they have looked like? Or if there's relevant lifetimes affecting them today, what would those be? And then ask, would they be male? Watch changes. Female? What skin color? Facial hair? Beard? No. Headdress? You play with bringing in these ideas. And all of a sudden, some things you're going to go, whoa, and it starts showing up. If you don't trust your imagination in the positive, not to make things up, but just creativity and imagination, if you won't trust that a little, you'll have a harder time doing it. I always say you have to risk being wrong to be right. So don't get into what if I'm wrong? Just try it out. And the worst thing that could happen is this. I saw you looking like a samurai. I mean, this is weird. Because you're clearly, you're a 9-foot tall blonde male, female, and yet I'm seeing you as a male samurai. There's nothing intellectually that would make sense. So you're like, this got to be crazy. And then you wait. Often, when you practice that and allow things to come through, you'll be surprised to see this tall blonde female going, I used to have dreams when I was little that I was this Asian samurai. I even bought a samurai, outfit and wore it for Halloween last year. You know, things like, and Asian food's my favorite. And you know, you start to go, wow. Now, you're not supposed to be all proud egotistically about it, but you should be able to go, this works. This is real. Yes, we can tap into these things, but it also means it's always coming through. You can read faces. That's one form of physiognomy or a reading of faces. Phrenology, the bumps on the head. Palmistry, the lines in the hand. Everything. It's all bleeding through. Even the stars you were born in and in your natal chart. They're there at the perfect setting for your particular soul contract this time. Everything really is perfect. Set up perfectly. And people just so easily underestimate it and forget it. But, you know, to imagine the way I am as a kid, things that were leaking through, and further in my age, and then Asian lifetime, and people, you know, there's one name that people, more than any other name, one name that people accidentally refer to me as. Like, that's another one to watch for. If your name's Betty and everybody calls you, you know, Mary Ann, but it happens again and again and again and again, you have to be able to go, is it possible? And you might track it down by saying, so let's hypothetically say a female, Mary Ann, and how could I hone in on when that might have been? Well, first I could use dream study. I could use psychics to support. But I could also just ask myself, in my imagination, where could I imagine knowing most of the people that use that name on me? You know, coincidentally, most of them that call me Mary Ann are females. Or mostly they're Asian, or mostly they're this or that. You know, family members, non-family members. What might that be? It's just a trip. How beautifully these things can go, and you just explore. You never get caught up in, but you explore and bring it to the now. And when you do that, you go, wow. You know, and so if people use this name for me, what am I going to do about it? Well, if 1 out of every 5 people I meet calls me Adolf, I might want to say, okay, I probably need to make some changes in my life, and, you know, in case I have any anti-Semitic kinds of things going on, and look at those. You know, I mean, I make fun of it, but if people are calling me, I might want to look at what that means. If they all call me something that has to do with important leadership, let's pretend like George Washington. Everybody says you're George Washington. Then I might say to myself, you know, if I was, and I'm running a business or a church or a household, how can I bring that leadership into that situation? And it changes me. It really does. Okay? It's kind of like exploring any other mythological study where you access goddess and god archetypes and bring their great qualities to you and heal the unhealthy qualities they may have had. Too much this, better watch that. And, you know, just like in astrology, you're a certain sign, you know, it's very much like that. Past lives, just like astrology. If I say, you know, well, I drink a lot, you know, gee, I just tend to drink a lot. And then somebody says to me, do you know, you're a Pisces, right? Yes. Do you know that Pisces often do drink a lot? Michael, I would go, oh. And I would want to do something about that. I would never want a memory, a thought, a past life, an archetype, an astrology, anything to hold me, especially in a negative form. I would use that as an awakening, like, wow, you're kidding me. Pisces, that's common, really? I'm after it. I'm all over. I'm working on that. That's what I would do. And if you told me that a certain sign is very, very intuitive, and I've been holding back that in myself, I would look at it as license to or permission to come out and explore. Okay? So past lives to me are a very healing experience. What we're going to do in our past life course, now just start bringing to a close. So we're first of all going to study in these few weeks. You know, you're going to get a lot in the few weeks if you decide to join us. It'll just be a lot more extensive and a lot less expensive. than most things, groups you could study with. Typically we start courses, not always, but typically, prayer, opening comments from the previous studies or weeks we've been working. If people have sent in, because if you sign up for the course, you're given admission to a website if you choose to, and make comments with one another. So we might sometimes read feedback from that. There's then spontaneous sharing like I'm doing now. Let's see, there's the interactive parts. So that's where you folks can ask questions as we go along. Absolutely encouraged. Definitely hone in what you're asking so that it's kind of simple as much as possible. I'll try to repeat it. The people watching online can know. I'll try to repeat your questions, sometimes as part of my answer, other times directly if I can, so that everybody's on the same page. But it is open, and by all means, and you're encouraged to share, especially though online as the group you are. Everybody has access to that group online if you choose to. And I love when that's happening, because you might go, well, yeah, but mine's no big deal. I happen to have a dream last night about a past life, and I don't think anybody else is interested. You have no idea, because someone else had a dream, doubted that it was relevant when you wrote, I had a dream, and it was after I was thinking about this one lifetime, where this might have come from, and then this dream that and it all comes clear. Someone else is going to go, thank you. So your sharing is educational on so many levels. And I did mention, by the way, things like health issues. I don't want you to say, blame your DNA, blame your race, blame your past life. That's not what I'm into. But I am into epiphanies and ahas. And Edgar Cayce called them scars of the soul, because in his readings he would say, well, this person has a little bit of this and they should just take more of this food and it'll help them. This other person probably needs a poultice. This other person needs a castor oil pack. This person needs to exercise in a particular form. That's how he did his health readings. But once in every so many readings, he would say, this is from another lifetime. And that opened up a whole can of worms. That's the first time Edgar Cayce was doing his readings. He didn't know about reincarnation. All this was coming to him at the time. And one time he did a health reading, and he loved helping people with those. And one reading said, this is from another lifetime. When that was over, he came out of his trance, and everybody's sitting around like, this is old school people. And they're all looking around like, he's like, what? It's bad. You said past lives. Past lives? Like, this was foreign to these people 80 years ago. And but it was true, and the reading said scars of the soul. So that's when you ran someone through with a spear in the heart, and you have a heart condition this lifetime. You did such and such physically. A lot of times it has to do with physical harms you cause. Sometimes I have been in shackles, and now I have fears of being controlled, and that could be literally phobias about. I was going to do a magic act of breaking out of some handcuffs, and I had a panic attack when they put me in them. That's a visceral kind of reaction. But sometimes it's more metaphoric. Sometimes it's like, well, I was enslaved, and I was in shackles, and now I won't work for anybody else. See, that's metaphor. It's not a literal, it's a behavioral or an emotional kind of thing. So scars of the soul, some of those very specific things that have happened. Sometimes it's this life, and sometimes it's other things that have carried over. Can you know which one? I believe the answer is you don't have to know anything. You are already okay. Does it help to know these things? In the illusion of life, yes. In reality, none of this is even happening. You're fine. But in the illusion of life, insights are good. These kind of epiphanies, for me especially, they're just, oh my God, oh yeah, it's always expansive to me. I've never let a lifetime that I can think of cause me contraction. Oh, now I can never do such and such because of that lifetime. I never felt that way. But if you can remember, this is about expansion, mind expansion, then it'll make a lot of sense, and you bring a lot of pieces in. The things you've already done, guys, it's not an accident. You're a beauty specialist, cosmetologist, beautician. You probably have done some things like this. Could have been anything from being the servant of royalty and taking care of them to being someone who was a healer. Now it's taking the form of cosmetologist before it was a healer. But more and more you guys are going to enjoy how funny and fun this is, because you're going to just realize it was there all the time. The kid that kept treating you like they were your parent, you're like, oh my God. And they have to get over it. Look, you were my mother before, you're not now, stop. Like, it's okay for you to help others with those epiphanies. You were afraid of such and such then because of, it's okay, let that piece go. And there are so many just heartwarming stories about, I remember this one woman had these 2 kids. One was a newborn. And, I remember one of them, this woman, she had her one child went into the crib room with the baby, and she could hear the child talking to the baby on the intercom. And the child was saying to its younger sibling, can you tell me about God? Because I'm starting to forget. And that was like, wow, right? And this other time, this kid was complaining to her mom, to his mom, about the other child that came into their life. But I don't like that, I don't like this, and I don't, and the mom tried to hit them with some spiritual wisdom and said, well, you were fine before, why are you having a problem now? And the kid just blurts one of those instantaneous things. That's before I knew they were coming. It's like there's sometimes these ideas, like I didn't know that was part of the plan, and this kid leaks these words out that when I was told that I was coming, I was only told this much, and then this plan changed from what I was told at the time. So these kids will slip these things out, but it isn't just kids. When you said to a friend of yours, this relationship is smothering me, it could have happened. This job is killing me. Something like that may be just blurting, and sometimes it's telling. All those kinds of, this is just breaking my back. These things may have happened. How is it helpful now? See through it and maybe let that go. When you let that job go, you're bringing closure to a lifetime. Think about that. You're bringing closure to Pat. That lady with the French doors, it's a great one. But everybody in this program and on this planet, everybody in this program has had that happen. You have, cut the chains that bound you. One time you took a chain that some person bought you, as a love kind of a romantic gesture, and when the relationship ended, you cut it and threw it away. You don't know why you cut it. It could have been, I'm done with this, pattern. I'm done with this thing, whatever it happens to be. Sometimes people have given gifts to you and you to them that are telling. Like, I remember one girl got this gift from a boyfriend that was so obviously gross because of it implying his control over her. To him, it was just like, oh, we're just into cool things. And I was like, wow, just not really great. So gifts you've given and received. It could be a T-shirt that says such and such. Who knows? But there's often something there that you don't see because people don't know to watch and listen. It's all, God, it's so amazing to me. It's probably the most amazing thing out of the whole topic to me is how connected everything is. Your comment, oh, I'm in love. He bought me a choker, and that could be cute. It could be cute, but it might, oh, we really had a great sexy time last night. They brought over handcuffs. That could be weird in all kinds of ways. It could be fun and sexy if that's what you're into, but it could also be, I wonder if it's something else. I wonder if that's something in here that they're feeling and remembering. The way you dress certain colors and non-colors. You might wear all black because you were a nun. You might wear all black because you were a witch. You might wear this color because of this. You might wear this color because of that. You might wear it because it's the opposite. You might like white because you were a nun. You might like white because you were once an angel and you remember being an angel. It's just, I can look at people and I just see it. I can just see you. I go, yep, Wiccan, past life there, this and there, I can just look at people and it so easily can download to me. Oh yeah, there's a samurai there. Oh, Knights Templar. It's just very easy, but I'm seeing it, feeling it, hearing it, thinking it, knowing it. It kind of comes to me in all kinds of forms, and any form. It could be one word out of your mouth and it all starts downloading to me. And that's how it can happen for anybody. We can all know everything at any time. Barring, we have our filters too. So it's all there. And your children, if you have children or exes, guys, just sit with it and it'll give you a new dimension of understanding relationships with your exes. Even if they ended and they weren't really great, to be able to say, I could see where that one, a lady asked Edgar Casey, have I known my husband in another lifetime? He said, yes, he owned you. Doesn't he act like it? That's what he channeled in his wisdom of words out his mouth. Yes, he owned you. Doesn't he act like it? And it's like, and if you think about it, that's a brilliant, accurate answer he gave her. I'm saying to you, the words actually can give these things away. Your feelings can give them away. The obviouses, these obvious things. I lived on a boat for 20 years of my life, probably not a coincidence. Boating. She had a boating accident once, and her thing of water is lifetimes old. So your love of water, your love of adventure, your lack of love for water, a homebody, all these things, none of it by accident or coincidence. That's how we started 2 hours ago, and that's where we'll sort of end it. I thank you guys for your time. If you have closing questions, let's do a couple quickly.
Is there, within the structure of the classes, is there any regression, progression?
We're going to do some journey work in the class. Thank you for asking. We're going to do some journey work somewhere in there. I never know because it'll just I just do the classes as they happen. But I know we'll do some journey work, especially since I just told you we were going to do that. Now I have to. But we're also going to do some great exercises that are going to blow your mind because of it. It'll bring so many of the obvious pieces to you all. Thanks for asking. Yes.
Okay, it's just the synchronicity of things. I had not read the newsletter yet, and I had coffee with a girlfriend this morning. So I finally had time to read it. And I read how much, I'd already paid for the course, but I read how much the course was. And if anybody has a Fitbit, sometimes you have a phantom, like Pulse or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
Go down 222, that's the cost of this book.
Oh.
And I say to my daughter, wow, that's a coincidence. What do you think about that,
Right.
I'm meant to be.
These synchronicities. You're thinking of signing up for the course. You get the announcement about it, and on your watch, it's the exact dollar amount that you're going to.
Because I called my girlfriend.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
This is what happened.
It's beautiful.
You have to be aware.
Yeah, and just like synchronicities, to me, not to obsess on lifetimes or synchronicities, but when you're in the zone, it's very, very affirming. It's very cool to go click, 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 things clicking into place. Anyone else? Yes, one more.
I had always thought that the only moment is the here and now, so I'm curious, I seem to have interpreted what you said as there's a hard distinction between past lives being fixed and future lives being more probabilistic and not fixed. Did I interpret your...
Yes, and yes, because there's several things you asked in different ways. So the only real time would be now, because it's the only one happening right now. The past is gone, the future is not yet. But in the illusion of linear time, the past has happened, therefore the akashic records would say that they're mostly, but not even those are entirely locked in. Even those are mutable. And I've had really bizarre experiences with past things that I know happened one way, but when I went back, I experienced a shift in them. When I came back to the present, they were different.
Me too, that's why I
Yeah.
said that happened.
You changed the past in the present, almost like leaping time. And I've had that happen. And I'll tell you how else that happens. When the historians say, factually, absolutely factually, here's what happened at the Alamo, just as an example. And then, actually, no, it happened this way. How do you know someone or someone's hasn't gone and changed what happened? It can happen. And it does happen.
Then the history book be different too then.
And then the history books end up changing. So there's the past that can morph, but it's a little more seemingly solid. Nothing solid in an illusion, but seemingly solid. The future, because it seems like it hasn't happened yet, seems more arbitrary, a little more mutable. And neither of those is happening right now. One has and one hasn't yet. Therefore, the truth is, only now is the closest you can know to the real time. Especially, though, since you can change the past or the future right now. So it's kind of this is the powerful moment right here and now. So does that kind of answer that? And so how far we go into things like that and how deep to be able to jump this way and that way. The long story short, in the journey work that we'll do, like shamanistic work, is going to include how to do journey work back here, change patterns that were set into motion here, which will change today. Likely then it'll change tomorrow. But also working on events now, and lastly, dreaming the world into being, it's called, which is to say, I'm going to affect tomorrow, the proverbial tomorrow, with doing some work, different work today. And that's really beautiful, because that means all of a sudden I'm seeing myself. I go and I see myself. I can see it in my journey work. I see like I'm meant to paint, and I unleash that talent in my journey work, and I even allow the future to start already accepting it. It's on its way. My art is coming to you. Like I'm downloading it into the future, and the future now has been given permission to accept it. So there's a lot of that where you can say, you know, like Abraham's wife, as old as I am, I'm going to have a child. And it's put into the matrix, and it doesn't matter how old she is. It's made a miracle because someone changed something here, experienced a miracle in the now, and then something wonderful happens. And she had to wait a period of time, because that means all that would have been already kind of matrix-wise locked in, you know, the probabilities were already set. Someone had to change that. God and their faith, Abraham and his wife, their faith, that changes. But there's so much that was kind of already threaded as a likely future that had to all get changed, which is one reason she had to wait for several years. And sometimes we're like, well, where's my miracle? Sometimes a lot of work is being done under, behind the scenes to bring your miracle, especially if it's phenomenal. If I've got patterns and patterns and patterns of poverty, and then this lifetime something shifts and I'm going to win the lottery, there's beings going, oh man, we're going to have to now go into your dream mind, your subconscious, your, all this to get your self today to shift into accepting prosperity tomorrow. Lottery, okay, we're hearing it. We're going to go and work that. But they're going to have to go and deal with patterns and fears, undeservabilities. Oh, I also stole somebody's treasure chest once in a Middle Ages lifetime, and karma and all this stuff has to be released. And God only knows, because if I've really done something and it was going to get worked out over 3 lifetimes, but a miracle's happening today, and now my good is going to come to me now instead of in 3 lifetimes, that would sometimes mean all the helpers on the other side are going to go and get the person you've offended to cause the 3 lifetime wait karma thing, to come into your life today and manifest as a pain in the butt, or whatever they're going to manifest as, for you to clear it. And if you don't, they're going to say, well, we'll just be putting everything back the way it was already planned. That's kind of, I'm using linear examples, but it is like that. If you want things to speed up, you have to speed up. And speeding up, according to the illusion, sometimes means pieces of the past brought in for healing and clearing, and then it's done. But you got to rise up and be the better person. So I want to thank everybody for their time, and blessings to you all. I pray that we've covered, it seems like a lot of variety of things, but I pray it's really sinking in and bringing things together. And do what you can. Join us. It's going to be phenomenal, and it's only a few weeks of your time. All right? God bless. We'll see you guys. Bye-bye.